The National Association of Secretary of States needs to be investigated. I think they have some sort of coordinated, corrupted effort going on of what they've been doing for so long, because I see, and I don't know this, so Naj, y'all don't come suing me. This is my opinion, But, when you start to see all these states and what they're doing, and it's all sort of the same thing that they're doing, they're communicating. I mean, it's an organization, right? Mm-hmm. And so they're communicating, and I believe they're following the same narrative of just trying to push back and trying to say, no, we don't need to do this, when in reality, this is what the administration wants. And, Donald Trump, he's the president. He's the boss up there, and he is doing everything that he can to secure our elections.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again on the State of Freedom.
The State of Freedom is a listener-supported podcast. We're committed to pursuing the truth about policymaking, decisions, and situations in Louisiana and at the national level that stand to impact our freedoms.
Please become a monthly supporter of the State of Freedom at freedomstate.us as we continue to expand the voice of liberty across Louisiana and beyond.
Meet the world's first living, full-spectrum, certified organic CBDA hemp extract. Ness's hemp oil was extracted from seed to bottle without chemicals, solvents, or heavy metals, and it surpasses world-class standards for purity. This pure and powerful CBDA has been proven to reduce aches and pains, ease mental tension, and promote better sleep. To get yours today, visit the Shop Our Partners page at freedomstate.us. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the State of Freedom, where we are grounded in faith and the Constitution, where we're committed to giving voice to the truth, living with courage, and taking action. Today is Tuesday, November 4th. It's 10 a.m. Central. I'm Danielle Walker, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host, the bulldog, the watchdog in chief of Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, Christopher Alexander.
Good morning, Danielle.
Good morning. We are coming to you live on Voice of the People USA TV and radio network on Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook. If you're catching us later, you can listen on our podcast audio-only platforms as well, like Spotify and Apple. And let me bring in our guest. Joining us today on this election day is a friend of ours from Georgia, Holly Kesler. Holly has been at the center of the election integrity fight in Georgia since 2020. She can clean up any mess I make here as well whenever she starts talking. But she has done so much to bring unity and cohesion on this issue among different groups who were all wanting to see clean elections. And now she's leading her own consulting firm, Kesler Consulting. Welcome to the show, Holly.
Thank y'all so much for having me. It's been a little while. How are y'all doing?
It has been. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah, it's good to see you.
Yeah, it has been to see y'all too. And so you can see, you can see my sticker. I voted.
Good job. Yeah. I thought it was a Bucky sticker at first, so I'm glad you showed us what it was.
Bucky's. Everybody loves Bucky's.
I don't know. Bucky can only vote if he's a registered Democrat.
There you go. Yeah. Or buried.
Right, exactly. Or dead.
Yeah, I know that's horrible to say, but it's true.
All right. Well, Holly, before we get into the conversation today about the elections, let's start with the scripture of the day. That way we don't yell as much as we would otherwise. It's today's scripture is 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 7 through 9. And it says, "We are like common clay jars that carry this glorious treasure within, so that the extraordinary overflow of power will be seen as God's, not ours. Though we experience every kind of pressure, we're not crushed. At times, we don't know what to do, but quitting is not an option." And I was reading that this morning, and I was just thinking about this conversation that we would be having. It made me think that as we look back on the true history of the American experiment, it's more clear than ever that our founders believed that they were on a mission from God to establish a nation that was built on the tenets and the wisdom laid out in Scripture. And unfortunately, corruption, deception, and apathy have moved us far from where we started, far out of alignment with our founding principles. But we have the opportunity to stand up, speak up, and fight for what's right, for the truth, for justice, and for accountability for all of the wrongs that have happened. And it's an encouragement to me that God is always on the side of truth, and He is with us as long as we are in honest pursuit of truth. So we may feel weary, we may feel weak, beaten down, and persecuted, but He is the one who strengthens us, and He put us here for such a time as this. He's equipped us for this fight, and as the passage says, quitting is not an option.
Amen. I
Quitting
love
is
that.
not, me too. Quitting is not an option. And one thing that our founding fathers, I guarantee you, knew and took seriously. I mean, can you imagine if there was any question or any legitimate doubt in the first 100 years of our country or more, particularly in the earliest generations, if there was doubt about whether or not someone's vote was properly recorded, if there was doubt about the security of an election, what do you think our founding fathers would have done? What do you think our patriots would have done? They would have absolutely corrected that situation and made sure that everybody who voted had complete confidence that their vote was accurately reflecting their desire. And yet we live in an age now, it seems like, where there's evidence of voter fraud and voter irregularity and cheating all around us. And yet the entrenched establishment is either willfully ignorant to it or actively complicit in it. And that's what I think is demoralizing, at times about this. Because if it wasn't for people like Holly Kesler and us and others around the country, millions of Americans would have absolutely no idea what's really going on in our voting system. So, Holly, welcome to the state of freedom, and thank you for all that you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that, Chris. And that was a wonderful, warm welcome. And thank y'all too. It takes a village. I say that, I feel like I say that 100 times. I said it 100 times raising kids because I realized it really takes a village raising a family.
You better believe it.
But it takes a village doing this too, so it takes everybody. It takes people praying, people on social media, people doing podcasts and helping us get the word out and the truth out about what's going on.
Yeah,
So no, I appreciate y'all too and everything that you do. So, and you're right. You're right about the founding fathers and where we've come from. And it's interesting. I just want to say this real quick and we'll dive right in. I just came back from DC. So I was in DC all last week. And with y'all talking about the founding fathers, you go up there and it's just the history and everything is, I took it all in, knowing the fight that I'm in now, and then observing and being there and seeing the memorials and home and seeing all the things that they did and really just taking it in. It was really monumental, and a great experience. That was the first time I really got to experience it and see everything that I did.
yeah,
I've been up there a few times, but that was the first time I really got to enjoy it. So
yeah.
I'm glad y'all spoke about that in the beginning because it's so important. So important
Yeah.
for people to remember, where we started and how far we've come and what it is that we have to preserve.
Absolutely. And it is so worth preserving. Down here in Louisiana, Holly, we have a Secretary of State who has admitted that there's 160, 170,000 people on our voter rolls here in Louisiana that don't belong there. In reality, it's a lot more than that.
Right.
She will not enforce a law that was passed in 2024 requiring anybody who's registering to vote here to provide proof of American citizenship. She's trying to move forward as quickly as she can with $150 million worth of new voting machines, despite the fact that, President Trump's administration have repeatedly said we need to move away from machines and cyber experts. And so we have our hands full right down here in Louisiana, working very, very hard to turn this tide. So on that happy note, how are things how are things going in Georgia right now?
Well, they're about the same. It's interesting too, and I do want to follow up with you off air. us on some of the things that you mentioned, but I hear this so much across the country with these Secretary of States. It's all the same thing. They don't want to. Oh well, we're going to remove this many voters, but from the voter rolls that should not be on the voter rolls. But really, that number should be quadruple. Probably I'd say maybe double, triple, but quadruple.
Exactly, Holly, exactly, pretty much quadrupled in the case here. Yeah, you're right.
Right. Yeah. And same thing with Georgia. But, and I understand not every state is the same, but we are seeing the same trend happening everywhere. And then just like you were talking about with the machines, here in Georgia, they're wanting to push it, spend another 70 to $100 million on upgrading machines and putting in, upgrading software, updating software and putting in new machines. And the thing about it is none of these machines are even, they're not even EAC certified to begin with, or weren't correctly certified. Or, what a lot of people don't understand is they say, well, the machines are certified and we have this certification. Well, did you certify every single machine? Or did you look at one and do a rubber stamp for the entire state? Because if you look at Georgia, we're all Dominion. We're all no ink as well. So now we're all Liberty vote, which that's a disaster. That's something
Yeah,
else we can talk about. That's a
we
total
should talk
disaster.
about that.
Great,
Yeah,
great
with that
point.
merger.
Yes, that's a great point. Holly, there's a suggestion on the part of a few people that really it was only rebranded. Has there been any substantive change, or is it just a rebranding?
No, just a rebranding, and I think perhaps there was so much mayhem and controversy over Dominion and what was coming out with Dominion. To me, it's just hey, let's make a switch here. Let's cover this up and we'll make it all look all nice and pretty and just put a new name on it, and then everything's wonderful again, and everything's not wonderful. So, and we've been told too that the technology is not going to change at all. Everything's going to be the same. And, that's a problem. The whole thing really is a problem as far as, these machines and the electronics. There's no way to fully safeguard a vote. I mean, period. They're connected to the internet. We know that. And, of course, I love when I still hear people say they're not connected to the internet. I'm like, no, they are. And people have slipped up and said that they are and admitted it. So we now have that confirmation for sure, even from the other side, they are. But when you get into those sort of things with the connections to the internet, and you can have whatever firewalls, you can have all the security apparatus that you want to. But when you're talking about things going from system to system, and then from, it's going to be traveling across, the line, or being uploaded to a cloud somewhere, that opens the door for interference from everywhere. I mean, it could be, well, look at Amazon Web Services that just went down. And I
Yeah.
believe No Ink is on AWS cloud services. And so, there's just room for so many different things, as y'all know, when it comes to the elections, so many vulnerabilities. And that's just from the electronic side of things. Then you get into actually on the ground and chain of custody matters and people not wanting to officially follow the law. And, I do feel like if people would follow the law that are on the books already, then maybe half of our problems would subside a little bit.
No
If
kidding.
we could just get them to follow the law, and there be some accountability there, then that might solve some issues. But yeah, this acquisition between No Ink and Dominion and falling under Liberty vote, that is just, to me, in my opinion, that's just, it's a bunch of hogwash,
Yeah.
Let me ask, Chris, does that shield them at all from any lawsuits? I mean, what is the reason for that? Is it just a rebranding campaign, or does it actually absolve them of any problems other than criminal prosecution of individuals?
I think to the extent, it's who owned and who was operating the system at the time that either the criminal acts or the illegal acts occurred. I mean, you can't commit, civil fraud, voter fraud, or criminal acts related to elections, then sell your company and say, okay, well, sorry, I'm out of the deal. That's not how it works. So no, that doesn't help them. But I was curious because and I don't really know why they sold, or why they're doing the rebranding, but I think a large part of it is probably because they want to get away from this ignominious term Dominion voting systems, which has such a disreputable name now. among anybody who knows anything about elections. And so I think maybe they were trying to sort of get out from under that by changing the name. But according to what you're saying, Holly, it doesn't move the needle at all.
Same pig, different dress.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like that. I usually say same song, different verse.
exactly. Holly, quick question here. I'm curious about this. Does Georgia require presentation of proof of citizenship when someone's registering to vote there? Is there a law or a statute on the books that requires that?
Yes, yes. We do have that. Don't ask me to quote it, and I don't even have my
No,
election book
yeah.
right
I'm
in
just
front of me.
wondering if it exists.
But yeah, it does exist. Now, do we run into the issues when people do register? I mean, might they be using something falsifying information? I mean, I'm sure, like everywhere, you have stuff like that. We also have an issue with our DMV, the same one kind of that everybody has, I believe, where we would like to see it go into more of an opt-in, than an opt-out program. Because, right now they're just registering, you go get a driver's license and everybody gets registered to vote. And you know how that is. You have to have, you need to be a U.S. citizen to be able to vote. And so I think there's some issues there, and that's going to be a legislative action too. We're actually trying to push that. That has been heavily discussed. But yes, we
So
are
Holly,
one of the states that are.
Holly, when you go get a driver's license, do you have to provide proof that you're a citizen when you get a driver's license?
So residency, yeah, if you're on a visa, or whatever the case may be, then yeah, you have to provide all of that. The problem is we shouldn't be automatically registering every single person getting a driver's license to vote.
That's the point.
And we are. And right now all it is an opt in, and if you don't even an opt out situation. So if you go in and you're going to get a driver's license and say I'm on a visa, so I don't have a right to vote, but I can drive on a visa, there's an opt out there that nobody's even paying attention to. I mean, you know how they do. The wording's tiny. It's at the very bottom. Nobody's telling you anything. Some
And the
cases you
reason
might
why
not
I'm
even be able to
asking
read
you that,
English.
the reason why I'm asking you that question, Holly, is because our Secretary of State, we have a law on the books, like I said, from 2024 that specifically requires anybody registering to vote to provide proof that they're an American, some form of proof that they're an American citizen. And, the registrars of voters in Louisiana are still saying that they're not getting any guidance on the issue from the Secretary of State and that it's not being enforced. And I'm like, how can you have a law, particularly a law that's significant and that important, and just not enforce it? It doesn't, make sense.
It doesn't, and it's unbelievable to me. And we have some of those issues too, where they don't check IDs. I think they've gotten a little bit better about it because there's been so much pressure on it. And we have eyes everywhere. That's one thing we've done really, really well in Georgia is we have eyes on everything. And just people everywhere now, watching. But in some of our rural counties, like I'm in a little bit more of a rural county, although we're growing massively. I know we had talked about some of the AI and warehousing and data centers and things. We're one of those in that area, but that's another topic. But anyways, we're still small enough too to where people, it's the older people that are in there, and they're doing their job and doing it well. I'm talking about the poll workers, they're doing it very well, and they're making sure they're checking their IDs. But then you get into places like Fulton County and, or Decatur or DeKalb and some of these other areas, even in Savannah, and it's like they just want everybody to vote and they don't care, and they'll do this, they'll hand you a ballot, or they'll write up a provisional and say you were registered. We just had an issue, whatever the case may be. We've heard it all at this point. So, but it is a big concern because, we see so many, when you're talking about people that are here illegally or even on a visa or anything else, there's so much money, we're paying for these people. We're doing, they're getting benefits. They're on, medicals, getting medical help. Now they have access to the voting system. And I think that's part of regaining sovereign control. These are all very important things that we've got to really focus on and make sure that, it is citizens only reaping the rewards and benefits of American citizenship, not everybody else.
Yeah.
Amen. And
Great
Holly, I
point.
want to pick up on something you just said about what's going on in Fulton and Cobb and DeKalb, potentially, right? With today being election day, DOJ has deployed staff across the U.S. to monitor the elections. What do you think they're going to be looking for? Because in my view, a lot of what election monitors have done, I mean, as long as they're not, some ballots or running 10 tens or hundreds of ballots through scanners multiple times, there's not that much fraud that you can actually physically see with your eyes.
Right, right. Well, and I think, I think it's good on multiple avenues. For us here in Georgia, it's the usual suspects. They're going to be in Fulton, Cobb, DeKalb, and Gwinnett. So Atlanta and all metro Atlanta counties, or four of the Gang of Eight. We call them the Gang of Eight up there. So four of those. But yeah, they've deployed to 27 states across the nation, and I think it's like you said. They're going to be looking for the obvious things, right? Do we have any trucks rolling up with pallets of ballots,
Yeah.
rolling in? But then there's also too, you want to make sure that everybody does have the opportunity to vote, or if there is question about citizenship, or somebody's not checking driver's licenses, or you might even run into a situation, especially in some of these more bluer areas and in urban areas where there is a lot more diversity. And so sometimes you do see things like Black Lives Matter come out, and in situations like that where there might be voter intimidation, So, and this goes across the aisle on both sides. I know a lot of people, people were panicking. We all saw the news stories. Oh, the DOJ is going in, but the DOJ has been doing that for a long time. It's their civil rights division, and so it's not just this election and this time around, but I think it's a wonderful thing, to have shown within the state and nationwide that over 60% of the people in America don't trust the elections right now, or the process. A lot of this is process and procedural things that
Yeah.
there's issues with. And so I think it's good to have that kind of presence, and making sure, to me, if I see people, the DOJ standing there, I just feel a little bit more safeguarded about what's going on, and knowing that they're ensuring from a federal level that the elections are being, run correctly and going to be transparent, and that everything's done right. So we need that assurity, and I think it's a good thing.
As long as it's
Awesome.
not the Biden DOJ, right?
Right.
Yeah,
That
I'm
could be
not.
bad.
Yeah, that could be bad. What about the federal probe? You had said that just very recently, I think just before this election, maybe just a few days ago, the U.S. DOJ has made a request for records related to the 2020 election in Fulton.
Yes, so they are. It's very exciting breaking news. And it just broke a couple days ago. It's something we've worked very hard on. Of course, everybody has heard about Fulton County in the 2020 election.
Yeah.
Um, and, and the amount of ballots that have been missing, that cannot be reconciled. Of course, we've got, thousands and thousands of duplicated ballots. And everybody saw the videos. Everybody's seen the videos of the ballots coming in and ballots being scanned and scanned again, and
Mhm.
all the things. And so multiple lawsuits have been filed. Caroline Jeffords is one of those that has filed on preservation of the ballots. Garland with Voter GA is another one. And then the state election board, Dr. Jan Johnson specifically, has inquired about them for over a year now. And it's, again, what we were saying earlier, same song, different verse. They always have an excuse. They always have something they come up with. And so we have a lot of cases here that are unreconciled, numbers that, well, legal cases, state election board cases. I'm on a case down in Ware County that ties into the Fulton County cases. So there's still a lot of very, very nefarious things that have gone on, and answers or questions we can't get answers to. And so the DOJ has finally intervened. Marjorie Taylor Greene was the first one to release a letter publicly calling for assistance to the DOJ and asking them to come in and find out what is really going on in Georgia. And now the DOJ, Harmeet Dillon has released a letter, and she put a timestamp on it. So
That's
15
huge.
days. Yes, huge. 15 days. All these years, everybody kept saying, I heard it, from all our election integrity groups, everybody kept saying, Georgia's going to be the first domino to fall, and it looks like it's going to
Yeah,
happen. So it's exciting.
it is exciting. The suits that have been filed in Georgia, the ones that the officials are resisting and not responding to and not providing information. Those are suits from private citizens. Those are not suits from any arm of state government, are they?
No, I'm trying to think. We have so many, Chris. I'm trying to think. We don't have any that are, well, I say that. We just had one from the city of Atlanta yesterday, and the Georgia Republican Party intervened in it. That was on voting hours for today. So that's a whole nother mess that we're dealing with out of Atlanta. But for the most part, these are private citizens or organizations that have stood up, and it goes both ways. It's, you have the conservative side, the Republican side, or pro-election transparency, fighting for stuff and filing lawsuits and trying to get information or documentation, whatever the case may be. And then you have the other side that is fighting against. And so they're countersuing a lot of different people. And like I said, there are so many cases in Georgia that are still unreconciled and still going on. And then we have the Fonnie Willis. So yeah, talking about the government, we have the Fonnie Willis case and our 19 electors. So her and her entire staff have actually been removed from that case. So they cannot prosecute it. And so what happens now is that goes to the Prosecuting Attorneys Qualification Commission, which is actually sitting with them right now. And they will make a determination if another prosecutor picks that up and carries it forward or dismisses it. And it does. We do feel pretty good that it's going to be dismissed. Right now, they're still hanging on and having to deal with all of that, talking about our 19 electors.
Yeah. You raised the Georgia GOP. The Louisiana GOP has some factions, and it's kind of a basket case. There's the election integrity crowd who believes in truth and transparency. There's the establishment crowd who wants to not rock the boat because, they stand to benefit from it in some way. And then there's the crowd who's like, let's just go along to get along. There's nothing to see here. We don't want to upset anyone, or we can't actually look into any fraud. Is the Georgia GOP similarly fractured?
So this is a great question, and I'm really glad you asked me that, because behind the scenes there's a lot of chaos and there's a lot of drama, and we do a good job keeping it behind the scenes, I think, most of the time. But it is, we had, and for the record, let me just say out the gate, I think our Georgia GOP is doing a wonderful job. Are there issues? Of course, there's always issues. There's always things that can be better. There's always room for improvement. But I'm going to tell you what's happened here is we have had some people here really go above and beyond on trying to divide and taking I would say, almost an unprofessional approach and in the way that they've handled things. Now, were there issues? Talking about the convention, absolutely there were issues with the convention. There's been a lot of other issues that absolutely need to be addressed. But when you're talking about the fractions within a political party, and I see all sides of it too. I see the establishment. I don't think all establishment is bad. I think all establishment has gotten a bad name because of the bad in the establishment. But I don't think that everybody is bad in the establishment. And when we say establishment, what I mean by that is people who have been in office for a long time. But there are some good people that are in office, and people that, in the beginning, I was, of course, you're all going, oh, they've been in office forever. But then you kind of start to learn, and you learn and talk to people and start building those relationships, and you realize, okay, well, they're not really bad. It's just a matter of them being uneducated. And so I think there's been a lot of that over the course of the years, to where, people have not known what we have known diving right into the elections and the machines and all of that. And so there has to be some grace there, with people, and to understand and educate them and, all that sort of thing. So to get back to your original question, yeah, our GOP and our grassroots, we do have issues between them. And it's really trying to bridge that gap and get everybody to work together, because when you have so much chaos and so much division, it just kind of fuels the hate and the anger. And I don't like that. I think we're much better when we find our common ground and we work through the issues and come together to really find out what the solutions are. What are the problems? What are the solutions? How can we all work together to make it better? So overall, though, I think our GOP is doing good. They've really been standing up on the election front, and I'm very proud of that. And we've had a lot to handle, too, and deal with. I mean, we've got 19 electors, and people are trying to raise money for lawsuits, and then we've got, state election board members getting sued, and coming after other rural, or local state election board members for different things. And so just trying to help, where they can. I do think they are doing good.
One of the things I've noticed about advocacy groups here, certainly not all, but two or three of them, and individuals as well in the grassroots, it's as though they want to create friction. They
Hmm.
want to impede progress toward the goal. It's because that's the only way to explain some of the things that they do, and they don't want to work, in commonality toward a goal that we should all be able to agree on. And I've never understood that. Since getting involved in grassroots advocacy, it's almost as though it is intentional. It's almost as
Hmm.
though it is an intentional effort to sabotage and undermine reform. And so, I'd love to get your thoughts on that, because you were talking a few minutes ago that it's some of the things you've seen are unprofessional. And I can tell you some of the things that we've seen in the grassroots are not only unprofessional, they're belittling, they're backbiting, they're treacherous, and it's very disconcerting. Are you seeing similar things among the grassroots there?
Yep. Yep. Same similar things. And it's not just our two states. I talk to people all over this country, as y'all know, and we're seeing a lot of the same thing. And so that's where I really think people have to, be vigilant on things. And Boone Cutler, a friend of mine, he's gone now, rest in peace, but he and General Michael Flynn wrote that book together about,
Yeah.
5G warfare. And I think that is so important. And I've got another friend that I work closely with, and he's like, we're in 6G warfare. And I'm like, well, I don't know if my brain can handle that yet,
I know. Can only do so many
Yeah, you
G's.
can only do so much. So,
Right.
but no, Chris, you're exactly right. It is, and it's concerning because it's like, have we been infiltrated? Because I've seen infiltration here in Georgia. I know firsthand what it looks like, because when I found it, it slapped me in the face. It was like running it into a brick wall. And so, and you don't want to think bad of people. That's the thing, is you always want, I mean, that's how I am. Like, I love everybody, you know what I mean? And so I'm
Yeah.
always trying to, be positive, that positive role model or positive influence, and bring people together. And I've always been really good at that, in nurturing relationships and kind of bridging the gap. But some of the people and some of the things that we see now is like this. I mean, there is just no reasoning with them at all. And I don't think all of them are bad, but I think there are some bad actors that have come in and are doing things on purpose. I mean,
You're talking about, Holly, you're talking about like psyops, like infiltration,
I mean,
people
yeah,
who are.
that's what it seems like. It seems like it's a psyop, like people are infiltrating into the party or into the grassroots to cause disruption. And to me, it is believable, because what happens when we're not divided and we are all together? They don't want us all together and moving in the same direction. That's dangerous for them, for the deep state or whoever, the other side that wants to destroy America. And so I don't think it's that far fetched of an idea that we are actually seeing those things happen. And maybe it's just we all have our fair share of coordinated crazies across the country.
Yeah.
We see that as well. So, but
Yeah,
it is concerning, though. It's
because I've
concerning
been trying
amongst the
to figure out,
grassroots.
Holly, I've just been trying to figure out whether or not it's just ego, people who see what needs to be done, but they just don't want to work with anybody else because of their egos, and therefore they would rather destroy or harm another group that's trying to achieve the same objective rather than see them get any credit for anything. And that exists too, on the one hand. And on the other, I think there is the possibility that there are people who are there specifically, intentionally, to undermine the movement.
Mm-hmm.
I think Satan will use whatever foothold he can get, right? So
Yeah.
if you have an ego that's going to get in the way of unity, if you are the center of the universe and not Jesus, then you can be a pawn of the enemy just as easily as someone who's paid to be a pawn of the enemy. So I think in some ways it feels like an act in futility to try and get to the bottom of whether someone is a paid bad actor or they just have a bad attitude and a wrong view of the world, or I don't know. I don't know if it's a good use of our time to try and parse through where these people fall, other than to say that if you're not with us, you're against us, I guess.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and when you have this many people coming in, jumping in the ring, and they do so much work. I mean, I see it all the time, and it is hard to say, and that's why I try to just love everybody and give them grace where they're at,
Yeah.
because you don't know if it's
That's
somebody
right.
that's just got an attitude or ego, or which sometimes I'm nervous that's going to be the downfall of America, if everybody
Yeah.
doesn't put that aside. But, people come from all walks of life and all sort of different avenues. So it is hard to say. But when you do see the consistency, it does make you question and wonder. And those are, like Chris and I were discussing earlier, those are the ones that I just really you just don't entertain a conversation at all,
Yeah. So
You just
you
have to
just
shut it down.
don't respond to it.
Nope, I have learned you do not respond to the drama and the chaos. Some people, they just want it. It's a fuel to the fire. So that's the best way I have found to handle it, is just don't respond to it. Of course, sometimes you have to get to a point to where, I've had people come after me, and I'm pretty good about just letting it go. But actually, my team, my guys, have actually come out really strong in my defense on several things, before. But yeah, I typically just ignore it and move on. It's a distraction too. It's a distraction. It creates negativity within you or within your groups or, whatever. And so I don't like all that stuff. I like to really stay focused on the mission, and we have a lot of work to do. And so that's what I always try to advise people, is just ignore it, ignore it, move on, and be positive and supportive of everybody everywhere that you can.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you have your sticker. You went to vote this morning. What's on the ballot in Georgia today, and what does it mean for the future of the state?
So our Public Service Commission races are on. So y'all know that's energy, our electric bills, and they're high. We complain, they're high. Everybody's electric bills are high, but nationally, on a nationwide average, we are on the lower end. And so it's a big race, and I'm hoping our numbers for the Republican side have been pretty low. But that's typical going into election day, right? For Republicans, we're typically election day voters, and so I'm hoping we're going to pull it out. If not, we're going to end up with like a AOC Green New Deal or something crazy like that.
Super.
So, yeah.
Is your public service commission, Holly, is your public service commission out there generally pretty conservative?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it generally is. I mean, we're generally, that's what's so shocking about not being able to get good things done, is we're a red state,
Yeah.
through and
We can
through.
relate to that.
Yeah, y'all
Can
can,
we?
Louisiana, I know, shocker, right? Yeah, so it is pretty conservative, but the Democrats are, they got a lot of money and a lot of backing, and they pull out the stops. And so, so we're just, I'm praying that we're going to have a good turnout today.
Yeah. Speaking of the Democrats, what's Stacey Abrams up to these days? Did she get she got her thing shut down?
So they closed the doors. Yeah. Verified after years. And then she's also being investigated, or I'm trying to remember what it was. We've had so much going on the last couple months. I'm trying to remember what it was. Something, she was entangled in a $20 million mess or something like that. I'd have to go back and look. But yeah, she's
Probably misuse of funds or something like
it
that.
was something along those lines, and then our organization got shut down, or they closed the doors on it. And so yeah, she's still around. She's still kicking, but it'll be interesting to see. I hear a little bit that she's gonna come back and run again, and I'm like,
Good grief.
surely she's not gonna do that. But you never know.
You never know.
They're
Yeah,
spunky.
she never conceded. I don't
No,
think
she
she
never
ever
conceded.
conceded,
She
did
never
she?
did. Never
Yeah,
did.
yeah. It's
They never give
unbelievable
up.
how people like her cannot concede and talk about the thing was rigged and everything, and everything's okay with them. But the moment President Trump, like in 2020, doesn't immediately concede that he lost an election, they're all over him. He is an enemy to the democratic process.
Yes.
What a hypocritical double standard it is. You know, but let me ask you, Holly, what about this early voting? You were talking about pre-show a court ruling recently that expanded the early voting hours. I think to make sure that everybody has a chance to vote and there's no voter suppression. Is that in effect today? And
Yeah,
what?
so well, y'all know we have like a month of early voting, right? And so what happened today or yesterday and the Republican Party intervened in the city of Atlanta. So we have these weird rules with, and this is honestly sort of a conflict of law, something legislation really needs to just iron out and fix, and probably will now that we've just had this issue and getting ready to go into session. Come January, I'm sure it'll be something that's on the forefront. But with our municipality elections, they're granted certain hours, right, to vote. And so that's until 8 p.m. But then our regular county elections, which is the statewide PSC race, Public Service Commission race, those races are till 7 o'clock, 7 to 7. And so they were trying to say, well, if we're going to be open for PSC or for municipality, then we can just extend it and people can come in and vote for the PSC race too until 8 p.m. We're like, no. That shouldn't be that way. You've got to stop it. And so our Republican Party intervened and there was a ruling. And so we were trying to get it all stopped, to 7 o'clock. But the judge ruled that they're just going to have to make sure that they do everything correctly, which it's Fulton County.
Yeah.
So how correctly is it going to go? So we're actually trying to make sure we've got eyes on everything there specifically between that 7 and 8 o'clock hour to make sure that nobody is, everybody's marking off the PSC race, putting an X through it, and voters are not voting on that race and only voting on that municipality race. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Actually, I
We'll
can only
see.
Put it
imagine
that
the
way, what
stories
could
that
go
are gonna
wrong?
happen. Yeah, what could
And
go
there's
wrong?
no issue as far as access. I mean, they're not restricting poll watchers access to anything that they need to be able to see.
Yeah, they do that. That's pretty regular situation that we have to go through, especially in Fulton County. They like to say, well, you can't see the numbers, because you're supposed to be able to write down the numbers, every hour. And some counties do that, and some counties, you get like Fulton. I hate to say it's always Fulton, but it's always fun Fulton, doing it.
Fulton.
Fulton. But yeah, so we have some issues with that as well. 2024, we are actually in a lawsuit over that exact issue with them not wanting to let any Republican poll watchers in. And we had won that one in 2024. I think I said 2020, but 2024, that was just last year. So here we are a year later. So I've not heard of those exact issues yet. I'm sure something will happen somewhere, but we'll see. We got to keep praying about it. Just keep praying that everybody does the right thing. I think that's the biggest thing is everybody does the right thing for the voters of Georgia. It shouldn't be about one party or the other.
Yeah.
Honestly, it should be about the overall.
For sure. Is there Holly, President Trump has come out, Tulsi Gabbard has come out, it seems like just repeatedly over the past year or so, talking about the dangers of these voting machines. I know y'all are a Dominion state, but their position has been very, very clear on the dangers, the vulnerabilities of these voting computers, and that we need to convert to a secure hand-marked serialized paper ballot system. Our Secretary of State, alternates between trying to argue that she is doing what, President Trump wants and ignoring it entirely. One of the two things she's doing. She's clearly not following the directives or the recommendations of the Trump administration. How is your Secretary of State responding to the very clear message of the Trump administration on this?
So our Secretary of State is Brad Raffensperger, and he is actually running for governor, and he is a disaster. And over the elections and running for governor. So, that's interesting too. But he's not responsive. In their mind, everything is wonderful, right? The voter rolls are wonderful. The machines are great. We need to upgrade. We need to update, and spend more millions of dollars. So we have the same situation here. And I'm just going to be honest with you, Chris. I think the national, NAS, the National Association of Secretary of States, needs to be investigated. I think they have some sort of coordinated, corrupted effort going on of what they've been doing for so long, because I see, and I don't know this, so Naj, y'all don't come suing me. This is my opinion, But, when you start to see all these states and what they're doing, and it's all sort of the same thing that they're doing, they're communicating. I mean, it's an organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, they're communicating, and I believe they're following the same narrative of just trying to push back and trying to say, no, we don't need to do this, when in reality, this is what the administration wants. And, Donald Trump, he's the president, he's the boss up there, and he is doing everything that he can to secure our elections. And so states, and I understand there are, a lot of people say this, well, there's constitutional states' rights. It is. You're right. It is. But it is also, especially when you're talking about federal elections, the federal government does have a right to play in those civil rights protections. When it comes to civil rights protections, that is every single voter. And so, so he does have a right to ensure protections for every voter and making sure that all of our votes count. There is no interference for not just foreign and domestic. And he took an oath to do that as well. So did all of our
Exactly.
So did all of our state officials, our secretaries of states. They took an oath too. So,
Yeah.
I think it's an issue with these secretaries of states not recognizing. And and the thing is it's like we're not over here with some conspiracy theory, crazy conspiracy theory about the elections. These are real proven problems and vulnerabilities and issues that, Governor Brian Kemp even recognized, him and his team. He even wrote a letter about Fulton County and the vulnerabilities and the duplication of ballots. And so this isn't something that people just, think up and talk about. There's full-blown documentation on all of this stuff. And for Secretary of State's not to be recognizing the problems and working diligently with the administration to try and fix it, to me, right there, that's a red flag. But I will say our legislature is doing that. They've just held a blue ribbon study committee. It was very, very good. We did six meetings total. They moved all around the state so people could attend and speak on what their concerns were. And they heard from different presenters, experts across the board when it comes to voting, and just elections in general. And so that was very good. And they're going to be able to, take that back to the legislator and really do some actions, positive actions for all citizens. Not everybody agrees on everything, but there was a lot of good that came out of that.
Yeah. So that was meaningful. So that was a meaningful.
It was very meaningful, I thought. But we'll see. I might be changing my mind in a few months.
Yeah.
We'll see. I try to stay positive.
We got to stay positive.
We do.
Danielle has mentioned several times that maybe one of the reasons why our elected officials, and specifically a lot of Republicans in our legislature, do not want to move on real election reform is that they're saying to themselves, look, it was successful for me. I won using this system. What vested interest do I have in changing anything? And that's how myopic many of them are. Look, I wasn't jeopardized by the system that we have now. I've been elected and reelected, so I don't need to do anything. They don't seem to understand that, their responsibility is to make sure that we do not have fraud and irregularities and vulnerabilities in our voting system. It's not all about them. It's about the body politic and making sure that everybody is secure in their vote. That's what it's about, right?
Amen. It sure is.
I think in some ways, it's gotten even worse since President Trump has won the 2024 election, because now they're like, see, we told you there's nothing to see here. And you're like, come on.
He just won. He won by enough to where the fraud did not prevail. I think that's probably what happened. It doesn't mean that there wasn't fraud. But Holly, I read there were between 600,000 and 700,000 Georgians who either voted absentee already or early voted. Is that an indication of anything one way or the other about outcomes in these elections in Georgia?
No, but I will say a lot of those ballots, some of those ballots were from Chatham County and they were duplicates. They got lost.
Super.
Yep. So that happened. As a matter of fact, I made a comical post. I just have to tell y'all this. When it was last week, and I think it was last week, maybe the week before. Anyways, I was talking to my friend. She called from Texas and she was like, yeah, we just found all these ballots. And I'm like, will you check and see if those are the ones from Georgia? Because we just lost a bunch of ballots. And it was.
Where do they go?
Yeah, it's like, where'd they go? And as horrible as that is, we did the same thing. Y'all just did. We just busted out laughing because we're like, this is ridiculous that we're even, this is a real conversation. But anyway, wow. So no, there's really no, a lot of people, I do like to say that, and I do think it is kind of proven with the data and the numbers, conservatives do tend to vote more on election day. But there was a huge push in 2024 to vote early, get your absentee, turn it in on election day, or, go ahead and get it, fill it out, get it back in as quick as you can, make it too big to rig. And so I don't know that I don't know that we're necessarily seeing all of that again. I think people have just really gotten more comfortable. It's the convenience of voting and more comfortable, but I don't know that it's really a sort of a tell all as to, which way it's going to swing one way or the other. I know that our numbers were down. Numbers were down going into election day. We were down a pretty good bit, so that's a little bit
Yeah.
nerve wracking, but
Yeah.
See how it
Would
shakes out.
yeah.
would you say the top two issues in Georgia are probably the machines and the dirty voter rolls, or is it what would another top issue in Georgia be that you think is very important?
In the election space,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. So the machines for sure. The machines are definitely an issue. I would say machines and voter rolls. I mean, we still see we have tons of duplicate voters. And it is so crazy. There's so many grammatical errors as well. And I'm thinking in my head, you go to Amazon and punch something, or you go order off any website, and they have the CAS system. Right there, you type in, I don't know, 123 Fanny Street, and it pops up, Atlanta, Georgia, da 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 da. Oh yeah, that's correct. Let's put it there. But the state of Georgia does not have that, and so that right there is a big cause for just human error, grammatical error. The way that it's inputted is not sequenced across the board. So I think that could solve a lot of those issues. But just the cleanup of the voter rolls too, like we were talking about earlier, that is most definitely a big one. When you have a wide open data center like that, like your voter rolls, and then you have access to get a mail-in ballot, and request an absentee ballot. Well, people that want to do nefarious things, can get access to the voter rolls and say, oh, well, you know, Jim Bob is 105 years old, but he's still in the voter roll. And he's just listed as inactive because he's not voted in, however many election cycles since he's been dead, but he's still sitting there. So let's get his ballot and vote for him, So it just opens up the door to so many nefarious activities that are unnecessary.
Yeah.
So yeah,
No
between
doubt.
that and the machines,
Yeah. Now, you mentioned at the top of the show that you were in DC last week. I know you had some pretty interesting meetings. Do you have any insight into whether we can expect some further action coming out of Washington on elections specifically?
Yes, I think there's going to be a lot in the news. We're getting ready to roll into 2026. That's going to be a really big midterm for the entire country. And then after that, it's another presidential election. And we absolutely cannot, everybody says it was stolen. I say it was hijacked. They hijacked it because they did. And so the administration knows that. They know that things have got to be rectified. And again, nobody is trying to go back and say that, Trump should be president, should be actually listed as I mean, we all know he won. We all know what was going on.
Yeah.
But we're not necessarily trying to do that. But there's got to be accountability, and things have got to be rectified, because if not, then it will happen again, and it will be in a much worse situation if that does ever happen again. And so it's all about regaining sovereign control of our country, our states, and our country with this. So yeah, the man upstairs, boss man in DC, he wants it done. And so, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of really good, positive things coming down from the federal government, and helping our states.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any sense on timing? Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. A great question.
I think it's going to be sooner than later.
I'll take that.
Try not to say
Yeah, I hope so too. And we have to remember, that President Trump has people right around him who undermine him, and who want to impede his efforts as well. I mean, that's unfortunate, but it's just a fact. He's got quislings in his ranks, just like we have quislings in our ranks on in advocacy organizations in our state and yours. I mean, everybody who's trying to do good things has people around them who would stab them in the back if they could. And I think it's just extraordinary what President Trump is trying to do and has succeeded in doing despite that. I just think it's absolutely extraordinary. And I think the fact that there is a letter from Harmeet Dillon probing into Fulton County election of 2020, I don't think that this is something that they're toying around with.
Mm-mm.
I think that they're deadly serious about getting to the bottom of this, and I agree with you that that is a cause of real hope.
It really is. And I tell people all the time, and especially going on podcasts, I make sure to say it. We are so blessed here in Georgia. We have had an outstanding team. And when I say team, I mean people from across the country that have really poured in a lot of time, energy, and effort over the years. And I mean, we're talking, I mean, y'all know 5 years now that we've been doing this and fighting this, but we've really had a incredible team that has worked hard together on so many things. We've documented everything and really come together, to make this happen. So I'm very excited. I'm very, very grateful for the DOJ and Harmeet and everybody that's involved. I'm not going to name all the names, but there's
Yeah.
there's quite the handful of fabulous people. It's going to
Yep.
be
Yeah.
it's going to be awesome.
Do you
And
think we'll
courage,
see?
Holly, is infectious, right, Danielle? Courage is
That's
infectious.
right. It is.
It is. Holly, do you think we'll see the likes of Sidney Powell or Rudy back in Georgia doing anything?
I'm not sure. I don't know what's going to happen from the legal standpoint. I know some people have to be careful on what they say, even a media outlet. I just found out the other day, I had no idea they could not even discuss Georgia elections anymore. But it was part of a settlement agreement. And so I don't know what's going to happen with, you had the Rudy Giuliani case, and that was horrible and horrific what they did to him. Well, everybody really, it's been horrible. But yeah, and then Sydney is another one. So I don't know exactly how all that's going to pan out. I don't know if they're going to be able to maybe reverse some of those settlements.
I sure hope so.
I hope so too. When the truth comes out, I really hope that, people are vindicated. They deserve it, and a lot of people lost a lot of things and have given up stuff. And so I think it's only the right thing to do. So we just have to keep praying about that. I don't really know the legal answer to that. So we just have to keep praying about that.
One thing we know, as Danielle said at the start of the show, there is no such thing as quit.
That's
There is
right.
no such thing as quit, and we will continue forward. And remember, we do everything that we can in the moment, and God will handle the results. And we have to have, and if we didn't believe that, and if we couldn't work where we are right now, and if we were constantly looking at all the obstacles in front of us, I think we'd go crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
100%.
we can't go crazy. That wouldn't do anybody any good, right?
No, we have enough crazies in the world. We don't need
There you
we don't need any more
go.
crazies. We got to stay sane.
Well, Holly, God bless you. Thank you for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Keep up the good work, and we'll be following you.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank y'all. And I love you both, Chris and Danielle. I'll see you soon.
All right.
We love you, Holly. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Chris, she's such an encouragement. I don't know how you stay in this fight for so long with such a good attitude, continually bringing people together, reminding them of why we're in this, right? I mean, that's what you see her do. She's like, okay, we may have all this drama on the sidelines, but what are we here for? And I think that's a great reminder for all of us. There's so much drama. There's so many attempts at distractions and undermining. But what are we here for? What are we fighting for? To me, she was a great encouragement on that front.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Danielle, it can be very difficult to keep your eye on the ultimate goal, which is to accomplish something that is greater than all of us,
Yeah.
which is the preservation of liberty and freedom in one form or another, government of, by, and for the people. But there are so many distractions, both within and without
That's right.
the ranks and the
That's
movement.
right.
One thing about Democrats, or at least Democrats who are on the opposite side of a lot of these issues than we are, is that you always know where they stand. You at least always know what their position is on things and who the adversary is. But within our own party, very often it could be difficult to know who's your friend and who's your enemy, who's fighting with you and who's fighting against you, which really makes it even more difficult to
Yeah.
achieve the objectives.
Yeah. And, I hope it's just as difficult on the left and they just put on a better face than us. I don't know. But one thing I loved that Holly brought up is that the National Association of Secretaries of State, need to be investigated. And I absolutely agree with that. I 100% agree with that because, there is some kind of collusion going on there, in my opinion. And what I observe, Chris, is something that I know that we've discussed, which is, look, the Louisiana Secretary of State put forward this legislation to inhibit free speech through exit polling and only allowing, quote unquote, bona fide media outlets to conduct exit polls in Louisiana. And then shortly after that, we see the arrest of Colonel Reynolds for exit polling. And so I think think that the patterns have to be acknowledged. When we see one Secretary of State do something to silence speech and then we see it happen somewhere else, we can't assume that it's just a coincidence.
Exactly. And it's not just a coincidence. And what the two scenarios that you described have in common, Danielle, is that they are both an effort on the part of the entrenched establishment to suppress the ability of citizens to seek redress about things that are wrong with our system. They're trying to retard that process. And it's absolutely outrageous what happened, to Colonel Reynolds. And there's no doubt that that was the political establishment, the Republican establishment in Arkansas doing that to him. It was the Republican establishment in Louisiana prohibiting now Louisiana citizens from being able to conduct lawful exit polls. There's no doubt about it. But it's all designed to suppress our ability to participate vigorously in our own government. That's what it all comes down to.
And I don't know where we go from here, but do you know, did anyone conduct an exit poll or attempt to conduct an exit poll in the last Louisiana election just a couple weeks ago?
Not that I know of. Not
All
that I
right.
know of.
So we may not have that opportunity until the primaries in they've been moved to May.
Yeah, they're now moved to May, and so, but I certainly am hopeful, and I encourage Louisiana citizens who are listening to our show to go and do the application, whatever it is that you have to do with the Secretary of State to get the credential to be able to do an exit poll. And when you're denied, I'm telling you that gives you standing to bring a lawsuit alleging a violation of your constitutional rights, and that's exactly what it is. And I still intend to talk to Paul Hurd and others about bringing a civil action on this, alleging the constitutionality of that law, because it's abhorrent to everything that we're supposed to believe in, not only as Republicans, but as constitutional Americans.
That's it. Yeah. We're not asking for favoritism for anyone. We're asking for a level playing field, and that's all we've ever asked for.
Yes, maybe one day, Danielle, if we can garner the stellar reputation for integrity and honor and truth telling that CNN enjoys in the country, then maybe we'll qualify with our Secretary of State to do an exit poll. But, we might not be able to reach that stature overnight.
Well, I guess we won't. I guess we won't reach CNN's stature overnight. Their reputation.
Well, hope springs eternal, Danielle. Hope springs eternal.
It does. It does. Just a couple of announcements, Chris. Tomorrow I have the great and one and only Professor Dave Clements coming on to talk to For the Love of Freedom. We're going to talk about authenticity and faith and living kind of a decompartmentalized life. So I'm looking forward to that. It'll be a more spiritual conversation with him. And then Thursday, we have, let me just double check. I'm really excited about Thursday as well. Back here on the State of Freedom, we're going to have, let me just double check that I get his name correct because I don't want to missay it. But the gentleman who's been leading for the McCullough Foundation, the studies that have just been released over the last 2 weeks pointing to autism as a main factor or vaccines as a main factor in autism. I think his first name's Nicholas, and I think his last anyway, his last name starts with an H. I'm sorry. Forgive me,
And you're talking,
folks.
Danielle, about vaccines. You're talking about vaccines generally.
Yeah. Yeah. Vaccines generally. Absolutely. Let me just look real quick. I have it on the calendar here. I'm sorry.
But, and Danielle, by the way, if you talk to Senator Bill Cassidy, our august incumbent U.S. senator, the consensus, and there really doesn't need to be any more study or investigation into this, is that vaccines don't cause autism. He said it. The
Well, it
CDC has
must be
said it.
true. It must
Yeah,
be
the
true.
medical,
Look how,
the scientific
yeah.
establishment, our public agencies have said it. So, might as well close the door on that one, right? It's got to be true.
Yeah. Well, the CDC has lost so much credibility. In my view, they almost need to be completely wiped out and start fresh. But, if refurb and restoration can happen, they need to be honest about this. And I know that RFK Jr. Has a lot of work cut out for him in terms of being able to rid the ranks of people who, for whatever reason, just want to go with the status quo, whether it's for nefarious reasons or whether it's because they just legitimately believe that they're doing the right thing, even though the evidence points elsewhere. So the gentleman coming on the show, Chris, on Thursday, his name's Nicholas Hulsher. He's the administrator and epidemiologist in charge of Dr. McCullough's foundation.
That's going to be really, really exciting and
Yeah,
informative.
I'm looking
You
forward
know,
to that one.
Danielle, final note here. Speaking of this issue, in what world, would anybody think that there's something wrong with questioning and doubting the official proclamations of federal public health agencies that receive so much money, massive amounts of money from the very industry that is pushing the vaccines that they're supposed to regulate to make sure that they're actually efficacious, that they're going to accomplish what they're supposed to do, and even more importantly, that they're not harmful to the people receiving them. How can you possibly expect to be able to rely on the official recommendations of an agency like that when they are so captive to the very industry that they're supposed to be regulating? I don't understand how any American can look at that situation and not be doubtful about what they're telling us.
Well, true. The same applies, Chris, to our elections. The agencies here, the federal agencies will tell you that everything is fine. The same is true for the DoD, right? All of the revolving door of defense contractors are going to tell you that we need X, Y, and Z. It's because we are living in state capture. I mean, that's the reality of it, whether it's big pharma, whether it's big elections, whether it's big tech, whether it's big defense.
Yeah,
They all have something to gain from what they're telling us. And I think that that has to change.
that has to change.
Yeah.
That's exactly why so many Americans, increasing numbers of Americans, view with great skepticism anything that our government tells us about anything. And they should. Yet we still live in a country where a lot of people just reflexively and blindly accept whatever the government authorities tell us about things. And to me, it boggles my mind. How many times do we have to be lied to before we stop believing the liar? Fortunately, Danielle, people across the country are waking up, and I thank
Yeah.
God for that.
Yeah. I do too, Chris. I
Yeah.
absolutely do too. We say it, I say it so often, but the elections are the linchpin for it all. If we can fix our elections, the rest of everything can get cleared out. But
Yeah.
until we can trust that the people who are in positions of authority actually were put there by people, actually are responsive to the people who legitimately put them there, are actually held accountable by the people who put them there. Until that happens, it's impossible to think that some of these other massive issues can be addressed meaningfully.
No question about it. The only way to hold them accountable ultimately is to know that our votes reflect our intent and a majority of what the voters want. And now I'm not sure that in every case that's occurring. But as you said at the start, Danielle, there is no such thing as quit. And we're going to continue forward, continue fighting. Thank everyone who listens to the State of Freedom, subscribes and supports the State of Freedom and LACAG. Go to freedomstate.us, LACAG.org. Support us, share us with your friends, and help us to continue to grow and build. Because together, Danielle, we will not only endure, we will prevail.
That's right. Amen, Chris. Well, you have a wonderful day, and I will see you on Thursday.
God bless.
God bless you. The secret to losing weight 2 times faster has gone viral. See the transformations hundreds of thousands of men, women, and teens are experiencing around the world with the Slenderize drops. These homeopathic hormone-balancing drops are proven to control appetite, support thyroid function, improve energy, boost mood, and increase metabolic rate. To learn more about the drops or other incredible natural wellness and lifestyle products, email me at danielle@freedomstate.us or visit the Shop Our Partners page at freedomstate.us. Hey, Danielle Walker here. I'd love for you to check out my online boutique, Lux Lion. My mission for Lux Lion is to showcase innovative African designers and sustainable mission-driven brands. To do that, I bring you stunningly beautiful handcrafted jewelry and accessories from some of my absolute favorite places on earth. Small batch wholesale for storefronts is also available. Join me in celebrating African artistry and shop now at luxlion.us. Use promo code FREEDOM for an additional 10% off your purchase. Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Be sure and check out the show notes for this episode. You can always go there and find the calls to action and resources mentioned in the show, and you can find out more information about our advertisers there as well. If you want to learn more about us or support our work, visit freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org. We'll see you next time. God bless.